Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. So some interesting news here. Okay, well, did an exorcism just happen in the Vatican? Well, in short, yes, we actually have it on camera. There's video footage of it. So there's really no doubt about it. A minor exorcism was recently performed at the Vatican by a cardinal during the Latin Mass that Cardinal Burke put on. We're going to take a look at that video footage and find out why that may be the case. Coming up next, right here on The Michael Lofton Show. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and just dive in and show you the video footage, and then we're going to analyze it together. We're going to see what prayer was used and perhaps consider why this took place. Again, we know that Cardinal Burke was going to be scheduled to perform a Latin Mass at St. Peter's Basilica. This is something that we saw Pope Leo decide and give approval for on the same week that he gave approval for the rainbow cross to be processed into St. Peter's. We saw when we were covering that news that he approved both the Pride procession into St. Peter's Basilica and this Latin Mass. And it did take place just a few days ago. There's been a lot of footage about it. A lot of photos have come out. But what fascinated me tremendously was the part where a cardinal at the end of the Mass performs a minor exorcism in St. Peter's Basilica. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to watch it together. Please let me know if you can hear the audio and see everything. Let me know that there's not any technical issues going on. If you can just alert me in the comments section, because I have been having some issues with tech and stuff like that lately. So please let me know if you're able to see the stream and hear it and all of that. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen and let's take a look at this together. It's in Latin and there is an English translation available. I'll just play the whole thing first and then I'll go through and read it for y'all. Please let me know if there's any difficulty hearing the audio. Let's go ahead and dive in.
De vergade de pace tot aan Satan zo bij de klosters. Neutrale captivos, en homens en credentiële. Offer nostras paces conspiratissimis, occidentissimos misericordia Domini. Et apparenda tacor serpente antiquum vis diabolis Satana. Ligato vid asclavismo ascultum ambus. Et in nom Dominus Iesus Christi, intercedente democrata Virgine Gens Maria. Vici Deo de tribuna radicam Daniela. Fiat misericordia tua dom suros con automat transmuter. Et just names asias omnes mundus pius, omnes satanica potestas, omnes inclusa franza rosari, omnes legio, omnes conversi de volca. In nomine virtue Dominus, Dominus.
Okay, so now you heard him say this prayer in Latin and it was transcribed there and translated on the screen. But for those who are just participating audio only, let me read it to you. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll turn it down this time and then read it to you. Beseech the God of peace to crush Satan under our feet, that he may no more be able to hold men captive and to harm the church. Offer our prayers in the sight of the Most High, so that the mercies of the Lord may quickly come to our aid, that thou mayest seize the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan. We cast you out every unclean spirit, every satanic power, every onslaught of the infernal adversary, every legion, every diabolical group and sect, in the name and by the power of our Lord Jesus Christ.
in nomine Virtus Dominus, Domini nostri,
And that's the end of the clip that we have. But what we see taking place here is known as a minor exorcism. And I'll give you a background as to who that is and why this may have taken place and reactions that we're seeing to it so far. Um, but there is a distinction between a major and a minor exorcism, just in case you're not familiar with that distinction. Um, a major exorcism is a little bit more rare. It's what takes place whenever a priest believes and has a good reason to believe that somebody is fully possessed by a demon, and therefore there is an actual ritual, Roman ritual, that one undergoes at that point. Usually, a priest who's appointed by a bishop or the bishop himself will perform this major rite of exorcism to cast out the demon. That's a little bit different than what's known as a minor exorcism that any priest can do without permission necessarily from the bishop. And it's kind of a lesser degree, it's of a lesser nature. It's not the full blown ritual and major casting out service, but it is kind of a minor one where the priest is calling on Satan to stop afflicting this person and to leave them. And you can see minor exorcisms take place in different forms. This one is known as the St. Michael prayer. You probably know the St. Michael prayer. Sometimes it's said after Mass. That one, though, is more of an abbreviated form, whereas there was a longer version that was previously used, and sometimes priests used as minor exorcisms. And there was actually a period in time where laity were allowed to use that longer version, but now it has been restricted to priests. And that's what this cardinal is doing here. He's using that longer version of the St. Michael the Archangel prayer, which is a minor exorcism. Okay, so let me give a little bit of background here. So in sharing my screen, this was shared by Michael Matt. Cardinal delivers exorcism prayer in St. Peter's Basilica. Something else happened yesterday at Summorum Pontificum, traditional Latin Mass in the Basilica of St. Peter, he says, October 25th. So this was just 2 days ago. He says, among the well-known prelates in attendance at the Latin Mass celebrated by Cardinal Burke was the renowned exorcist Cardinal Simoni, who at 97 years of age stood at the pulpit and positively thundered an exorcism prayer composed by Pope Leo back in 1890. This is that prayer that Pope Leo composed, and some thought that it's due to a vision that he had of Michael the Archangel and Satan taking over the church for 100 years. And it turns out that story is not actually historical. A lot of people don't know that. I mean, I'm not trying to burst anyone's bubble. That it doesn't appear that there's any evidence that Leo actually had that vision. He did, however, promulgate this longer prayer, though, several years after that experience allegedly happened. Be that as it may, he composed this longer prayer, the longer version of the St. Michael the Archangel exorcism, and that's what took place here. It says, well, I actually read it to you. We beseech the God of peace to crush Satan under our feet, that he may no more be able to hold men captive and to harm the church. Offer our prayers. We offer our prayers in the sight of the Most High, so that the mercies of the Lord may quickly come to our aid, and thou mayest seize the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil. We cast you out, every unclean spirit, every satanic power, every onslaught of the infernal adversary, every legion, every diabolical group and sect, in the name and by the power of our Lord Jesus Christ. So why did he do this, right? What was the purpose for this? Some are speculating that what was going on here is a response to what recently took place at the Vatican. Again, at the same time that Pope Leo approved of this Latin Mass to take place, he also approved of a gay procession into St. Peter's Basilica. And a lot of people felt it was defiled because of that. And some people also felt that St. Peter's had been defiled several years prior because the image of Our Lady of the Amazon, aka what people call Pachamama, was processed into St. Peter's Basilica. We've talked about that, extensively here on this channel, and they felt that that defiled St. Peter's Basilica. So some people are interpreting the cardinal's actions here as um, purifying St. Peter's Basilica from defilements that you find from the rainbow procession to the Pachamama idol, as they're calling it. Take a look at this deacon who says, at long last, a heroic cardinal conducts an exorcism prayer at St. Peter's Basilica, desecrated by the veneration of the demonic Pachamama idol, in a homosexual pride march through the Jubilee Holy Door that openly defied God's revelation. He says, thank you, Cardinal Simoni. In response, expect a deluge of demonic rage, he says. So he is interpreting this as, the Cardinal is doing this simply to purify St. Peter's Basilica of all the horrible and demonic things that have taken place there over the years. And he refers to those two instances as things that he says is something that defiled St. Peter's Basilica. Others are going to just simply interpret this as, well, hey, he does this pretty much everywhere he goes, this particular cardinal, and so it's not necessarily a concession that St. Peter's had been defiled. Does he specifically tell us why he did this? No. So we don't necessarily know his motives and intentions. Just depending on who you ask, you'll probably get a different reason and different answer as to what his motives were. Albeit it is pretty fascinating to see this take place, right? Some are welcoming it. They think that this is an absolutely wonderful thing. Others are undermining it, and they feel like, no, this is him actually undermining the Pope and the Archpriest of the Basilica. In fact, I came across a comment of somebody on that thread saying that it seems like an insult to the Bishop of Rome and to the Cardinal Archpriest of the Basilica. He implies that they should have done it. Very inappropriate for a cardinal. So that kind of raises the question, was this expected? Did Pope Leo know he was going to do this? Did he give him permission to do it? Did he need permission to do it? Or is this just something that, he did impromptu? Is this something he doesn't really need permission for because it's a minor exorcism prayer and he's a cardinal at a liturgy, and so you can just do it anyway? Different people are going to interpret it differently, right? Now, it does raise a fair question. If St. Peter's needed an exorcism, should not the Bishop of Rome or the Archpriest that he has assigned to the Basilica have done so? Fair question, right? Does it really take another cardinal at a Latin Mass delivering that, or should this have been something that the Bishop of Rome should have already done either himself or vicariously? Fair question for people to ask, although it was done nonetheless, right? And it's pretty fascinating to see this. And again, we did have at the same time, just a few weeks prior, this, or you didn't see it, other people discussing it because there wasn't a lot of news coverage. You have this. Sorry, let me turn off the audio. Fox News evidently has a video playing in the background, but you saw the picture there when I pulled up their article. That was a rainbow cross that he allowed to be processed into St. Peter's Basilica. Right around that same time, he sent a bishop to celebrate an LGBTQ Catholic Mass nearby, and heard of what this group is doing, was very enthusiastic about it, unfortunately, and kind of gave his blessing for them to process into St. Peter's and do this. And a lot of people felt it was defiled, not only because of the rainbow cross, but also because of the rainbow flags, transgender flags, gay men holding each other's hand, walking in there, processing with profanities on their backpacks and all sorts of things. And so some people have been, hoping that there would be some kind of purification event, some kind of purification rite. Maybe that's what was going on with the Latin Mass here. Now, let me read to you just a little bit about that Latin Mass. CNA just posted an article Um, and let's read about it here. Somebody says, "I thought it wasn't Pachamama, but Our Lady of the Amazon." See, that's been the debate that I've discussed for years now. So watch any of my videos talking about it. Again, some people said it was Pachamama because they said that Pope Francis called it that. Others have pointed out during the service they called it Our Lady of the Amazon. So yeah, it kind of raises that discussion that we've explored exhaustively at this point, right? Um, you know, but yeah. Okay, so Cardinal Burke celebrates Latin Mass in St. Peter's Basilica. So Cardinal Burke celebrated a special traditional Latin Mass for hundreds of pilgrims in St. Peter's Basilica 2 days ago, a return to a prior custom suspended in 2022. So, since 2022, this annual Latin Mass at St. Peter's Basilica did not take place. Burke celebrated the solemn pontifical mass, a high Latin mass said by a bishop at the altar of the chair on the second day of October 24 through 26 Summorum Pontificum pilgrimage. The cardinal also celebrated Latin mass at the altar of the chair for the pilgrimage in 2014. The mass was preceded by a half-mile procession from the Basilica of Saints Kelso and Giuliano to St. Peter's Basilica. The Summorum Pontificum pilgrimage, in its 14th year, brings people to the See of Peter to give testimony of the attachment that binds numerous faithful throughout the whole world to the traditional liturgy, according to their website. So the pilgrimage began on the evening of October 24th with Vespers in Rome's Basilica of San Lorenzo, presided over by Cardinal Zuppi. So we actually saw him. He was one of the papabili, right? He was one of the ones that some people thought might be the next pope. A solemn closing mass of Christ the King will be celebrated on the final day of the pilgrimage, the 26th, which was yesterday. In 2023 and 2024, the pilgrimage was not able to receive authorization to celebrate the Latin Mass at the altar of the chair in St. Peter's Basilica. And that might be due to the Traditionis Custodes document by Pope Francis. The Office of Liturgical Ceremonies of St. Peter's Basilica and the director of the Holy See Press Office did not respond to CNA's request in September for comment on this. Burke, a champion of the traditional Latin Mass and one of the most prominent critics in the hierarchy of the late Pope Francis, under whom he fell conspicuously out of favor, met Pope Leo in a private audience on October 22nd. That was right around the time we saw him meet with Father James Martin. And Father James Martin told him all about this gay LGBT pilgrimage, and Pope Leo was really enthusiastic about it. At the same time, he met with Cardinal Burke, and it seems like he gave him approval to do this Latin Mass at the same time. The way I read that is Pope Leo wants to take a middle approach of allowing both of those things to take place in the church, to one degree or another, at least. Latin masses, pride masses, traditional Latin masses with Saint Michael, the Archangel exorcisms, gay masses with pride rainbow flags and all that. I get the impression he wants to walk in between in order to avoid some kind of formal split and schism. That's the impression I'm getting. Maybe I'm wrong. Roraticelli, a prominent website for devotees of the traditional Latin Mass, called the celebration of a solemn pontifical Mass in St. Peter's Basilica, again, an important sign of increased tolerance for traditional liturgy. Other traditional Catholics have criticized Pope Leo and said that quite a few Latin Masses have been shut down already in his pontificate, and they don't think that one liturgy at St. Peter's Basilica really means anything when others are being shut down. So there's different ways in which people have kind of interpreted him on the question of the Latin Mass and tolerance for and relieving of restrictions for the Latin Mass. It still remains to be seen long term what he's going to do, if he's going to reverse Traditionis Custodes or if he's going to continue to implement it as he's been doing so far. Okay. So let's also talk about this that just came up. Pope Leo XIV on the gifts of women in synodality. Quote, women are already better, end quote. They're putting that as the title of the article. We talked a little bit about that clip yesterday. Um, Pope Leo XIV drew laughter and applause on October 24th when he recalled asking his mother in the 70s whether she wanted equality with men. No, she replied, because we're already better. The Pope shared the memory during a discussion on the role of women in the church at the opening of the Jubilee of Synodal Teams and Participatory Bodies, a 3-day gathering for representatives involved in implementing the global synodal process. The story, he explained, came from a time when debates about equality between men and women were just beginning to take hold in his native United States. His mother's response, he said, was not a joke, but an affirmation of women's distinctive gifts. There are many gifts that women have, he added, recalling their vital roles in family and parish life. Pope Leo then described a community of sisters in Peru whose charism is to serve where there are no priests. They baptize, assist at marriages, and carry out a wonderful missionary work that is a testimony even for many priests, he said. But the Pope warned that in many parts of the world, cultural barriers still prevent women from exercising their rightful roles. Not all bishops or priests want to allow women to exercise what could very well be their role, he said. Well, I wonder what specifically does he believe their role is liturgically here? Is he talking about them performing baptisms and marriages? That may have been the context. There are cultures where women still suffer as if they were second-class citizens. The task of the church, he added, is to help transform those cultures according to the values of the gospel. The gifts and charisms of every person are respected and valued. Turning to the wider synodal process, the Pope insisted that synodality is not a campaign, it's a way of being for the church. He says, responding to questions from representatives of the church in Africa, Oceania, and North America, Leo emphasized the importance of patience and formation. Not all things move at the same rhythm or speed. Oftentimes, the resistance come out of fear and lack of knowledge. Without proper formation, there are going to be resistances and a lack of understanding. I covered that part specifically yesterday, so if you want to know my thoughts on what he may have been referring to there, I think it's much broader than what's being discussed in this article. So maybe check out that video. So yeah, that's interesting update there on that particular one. But bringing it back home to the event here with Cardinal Simone, who has the St. Michael's prayer here, the longer version of it. He performs this right here at the main altar at St. Peter's Basilica, and it's pretty fascinating to see this. So yeah, I wanted to bring it to your attention as well as the Latin Mass that just took place there, and I want to get your thoughts on it. So certainly put what you think about the exorcism prayer and also the Latin Mass that just took place at St. Peter's Basilica. Put your thoughts there in the comment section. I would certainly love to hear your feedback. And of course, hit the like button and the subscribe button. All right, that's going to do it for now. We'll see you later. God bless.